Good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of the National Shipper Advisory Committee, also referred to as NSAC. For those who are new to this process, I'd like to take a moment to explain how the committee operates, introduce some of its members, and outline what to expect from today's meeting. Quick introduction. My name is Mark Braganza. I serve as the designated federal officer for this committee at the Federal Maritime Commission. My role is to act as the liaison between the committee and the agency, ensuring compliance with federal laws. NSAC was established by Congress to provide the FMC with industry insights on shipping and supply chain issues. It is composed of members from various industries, both importers, exporters, who identify key challenges for the Commission to address. I want to acknowledge a few people here. So before we begin, I want to clarify that today's meeting is completely separate from S&P Global and the Journal of Commerce. These organizations are not affiliated with NSAC and do not influence our discussions. However, I sincerely appreciate their generosity in allowing us to meet following the TPM conference. Special thank you to Mark Zanconi and his team for their support in today's logistics. I'd also like to take this time and recognize some of my colleagues at the FMC. Assisting me today back in Washington, D.C. is Elena Beck. She is the Assistant Designated Federal Officer. Let's see here. Also present, is Commissioner Vekich here by chance?
Yes, just came in.
There you go. Welcome, Commissioner Vekich and his counsel, Corey Sink. Actually, virtually attending with us, I see Commissioner Dye. Hello, thank you for joining. We also have, I see in person, we have the director and deputy director. So Director John Cruz, he's our director for the Bureau of Enforcement, Investigations and Compliance. We also have his deputy director, Eric Cox. Let's see, I think that is it in person and virtually. My eyes are, yeah, I think we're good. Okay. So what to expect today? A quick overview of today's agenda. The committee will be discussing their ongoing work, including updates from their subcommittees, which focus on key industry challenges. Following that, the floor will be open for audience participation, with TPM bringing a diverse range of supply chain professionals. This is a great opportunity for some input, especially you guys are our ears and boots on the ground. Couple housekeeping reminders. In terms of meeting records, as required by the Federal Advisory Committee Act, today's meeting is being recorded. Minutes are going to be posted on the NSAC's website, and any presentations will also be posted and made available online. In terms of virtual participation, if I can ask the committee members that are joining us virtually, if you could mute your microphones unless speaking, that'd be greatly appreciated. Antitrust laws do apply to today's discussions, so please be mindful of that. And last reminder, committee members do not speak on behalf of NSAC, the FMC, or the federal government outside of this official setting. However, they may share their personal observations about their service and opinions on committee recommendations. So with that, I apologize. I just want to quickly introduce, to my right, we have Chair Mike Simonis, and to his right, we have the Vice Chair, Ken O'Brien. And Mr. Chair, I confirm that based on my calculations and math, we've talked about math at the TPM conference this week. We have a quorum, and you may begin.
Outstanding. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to, again, I think echo Mark's comments that we really appreciate TPM and S&P Global for hosting this for its second year. As we've tried to engage with the shippers around the country, this represents one of the best opportunities over the course of the year to try to hear from as many people as we can, because really, while the committee is focused on a lot of different priorities that they've been going after for the last 3 years, we really want to make sure that we're engaged with the broader community, right? Because again, we've got a well-represented group of exporters, export verticals, And yet we want to ensure that as we continue to focus on priorities that we're hearing from you. We're making sure that nothing's getting left out. And as we kind of look at either areas to review or potential recommendations, that it is guided with feedback from more of you. Because again, we're really trying to focus on efficiency and many other things in the system. And to Mark's point, you're living this as we are every day. So it's important to hear from you. And I really appreciate those who've stayed today, right? I think, you know, this last day of TPM, there's a lot of things still to do, but we've definitely got better attendance than last year, and we appreciate the opportunity you're spending the time with us today. And I'll turn it over to Ken.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to echo Mike and start there. First of all, for those of us all in this room today, those virtually, not so much, it's Wednesday at TPM. We made it. Let's do it. I don't know how many meetings you've all gone through, how many presentations, how many PowerPoints, probably more than you want. For those who like to go out, your liver's made it. Congratulations. But I think it's important. And so for everyone who did stay, I do think that's a big thing. And, you know, getting participation means a lot. I don't have a lot to say today because I've lost my voice. But I do think, you know, what I took away from the last 3 days is a bit of a cautionary tale of the world is quite uncertain. And with uncertainty in our industry, that tends to lead to a misallocation between shippers, carriers, in lots of different ways. And so I think this group, it is probably time to be very thoughtful about seeing what's going on in the macro world and how that will ultimately affect the relationship that we each have with our carrier partners and they with us. And so that's not in any way a bad thing. I just think as the world changes, and we clearly are in a state of change, there's probably some stuff that's going to change along with it that this group and really the shipping public needs to kind of think about and weigh in on. Other than that, look forward to having a great meeting and finishing up a great week.
All right, so before we begin, we've got a couple external presentations that we want to go through. But before we do that, we've got some new members that are replacing some other members. And so I wanted to recognize Colby Amon, who's joining us virtually, who's going to be representing the Schooler Company going forward. And then in the room, we've got David Shanks with Tractor Supply and Selwyn Moore, who's with Blue Diamond. So look forward to working with you guys and maintaining your company's representation in what we're doing. And now I will turn it over to the first external presenter, which is the Digital Container Shipping Association, who NSAC and the Data Subcommittee have been actively working with on an ongoing basis, going back to our data recommendations to the FMC at our Q4 public meeting in 2022, hosted by the Port of Oakland. Turn it over to Dominic.
Thank you. I needed a clicker still. I was asked to face the camera, so I will need to be standing a bit with my back towards you, but I'll try to manage a bit with, so it's not out of disrespect that I'm turning my back to you. It's purely out of making sure that I'm visible in the camera. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting us again to give an update on DCSA. For the first time in person, so that's also really great to finally be able to meet you in person. For today, I'm going to, a little bit of an update again on who we are, what we do, what we achieved recently. I won't do the full introduction about DCSA because I've done that a couple times already, but just very quickly, we are an association of large container shipping lines covering about 75% of global containerized transport. And we have the goal to make container shipping more efficient by driving digitalization and by, in particular, by setting standards in that area. So for example, we make track and trace standards, bill of lading standards, vessel schedule standards, and more. We are not a platform. We are not an IT solution. To make it very simple, what we do is comparable to how email works. You can have your different types of accounts. You can have different apps to look at your email, and you can look at your email and write emails with on different devices. And that still gives to anybody who uses email a free choice to have a very simple application, very complex application. And what we do is simply make sure that between the different accounts, the different apps, different devices, email can function in that same way. And that was something until a couple years ago that didn't exist yet in container shipping. And well, we've gotten quite a long way, but we're not fully there yet. So quick overview of what we did last year. I presented that in December also already, but thought it might still be good to repeat it this time a bit again. So last year, we saw 3 times more adoption of our standards than the year before that. It's really going fast now. Big example, or the best example, is actually our track and trace standard, which now has reached 180 million API calls, as it's called. So 80 million messages according to our standards per month. And with that, I think we can conclude that we are really setting a standard within that industry. And I kept also in the past couple of days hearing from increasing amount of people, yeah, hey, we already use your APIs, and that's really great to see. We also released 2 new standards last year, which I presented about a couple times already. That's the operational vessel schedules, which is the exchange of the schedules between carriers and terminals. But more importantly for this group, the commercial schedules, which comes in 3 flavors. I won't go into the full details of that today. But yeah, very important with that was that it was really driven, pushed, asked for by shippers, BCOs, and several members here of the MSAC in particular, who also wrote a letter to our members, to the CEOs of our members, asking to speed that up, make sure that it's there. And we managed that together with our members as well. And a couple weeks ago, another letter was sent to the CEOs, well, asking for more, also in terms of engagement and planning and these kinds of things. But that's really important to us. It shows that what we do is necessary, is valuable for the ones we are trying to do it for, which is the customers of the shipping lines, and that's really great. And then lastly, we also have a new carrier since last year that joined us, which is PIL, and with that we're covering really the vast majority of the market of container shipping by now. Today, and I promised that last time already, I will talk a bit more about our electronic bill of lading standard and our booking standards, but I'll start off with the bill of lading. So the bill of lading, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, and I'm sure that I don't need to explain fully what a bill of lading is anymore. Again, what we do is we're not a solution provider in that sense. We purely make data standards, API standards, safety and security standards, but it's not just technical work. We also do a lot of work in making sure that it works legally, making sure that legislation across the globe is changed, making sure that banks are on board, because that's a really important aspect there in being able to use bill of lading. So that's what we do in that area. And quite recently, we released a new version, a 3.0 version of our electronic bill of lading standards. And the big change there is predominantly that it now includes also hazardous materials or dangerous goods, as the IMO calls it. It's been heavily updated for European customs requirements. And this is actually the version that really completes it, because we can now cover dry containers, reefer containers, dangerous goods. Basically everything is in this version that is needed to make it work on a day-to-day basis for any kind of container. And we also see that with this version, our members are really rolling it out quite big, or intending to do so. And even though the standard is very fresh, was only published officially a couple of weeks ago, members are already piloting together with customers, solution providers, banks are involved. And yeah, we really want to ask you all also to start using that. Our members have committed already in 2023 to go towards 100% electronic bill of lading in 2030. That seems far away, but at the same time, it's not that far away. We see it growing. It's been a slow start for us, but it's really going up now with the use of the bills of lading. Our CEO, Thomas Bager, was presenting a couple days earlier, also at a panel at TPM about this. Yeah, and then, well, what I can say on why should you use the electronic bill of lading, I can give you a very long list of benefits and reasons why and big numbers and what it would mean in terms of cost savings, but I think I can just make this very simple. I'm from Europe, and when I arrived earlier this week in Los Angeles, I usually, my lovely wife, or at least usually she is, but don't tell her that I said that. But no, but she's really lovely. But she wants to know if I arrived well, if I had a good flight, and these kinds of things. And well, I can write her a letter with a big feather, and probably that letter won't even arrive by the time I'm back. Or I can send her a text message. And this is basically what we're doing still with the bill of lading in practice. We're still doing that on paper, and it's not even of this century anymore, really not even of this millennium. There were in the past a lot of reasons why it wouldn't work, why you couldn't do it, but those are basically gone on. It's really a matter of starting to use an electronic bill of lading by now. Moving on to our booking standard, or new version of the booking standard, and what we call the end-to-end administrative process. So at DCSA, we have different streams in which our standards function. This is the vessel journey, the container journey, and then there is, well, simply said, the administrative processes around it, which starts obviously with booking. Also here within the industry, there was not really a standard for booking, and again, we're not a booking platform. We don't make sure that the booking happens. You can do that either directly or in any other way you're doing it right now. But we just make sure that there is a standard behind it, just like when you book a flight. So I had had a transfer coming over here, and I booked with one airline, and then I had to transfer to another airline. But I didn't have to book twice. My data was just there, and this is something that didn't really exist in container shipping until a couple of years ago. And what was even more strange is that there is in booking, as you know, there's a lot of compliance data in there for customs, for hazardous goods, and those kind of things. And that wasn't the same either, even though all the carriers should be compliant with the same requirements there, and it cannot be that that's different, essentially. So booking, very important. It's the start of basically everything. Then we move on to the bill of lading, and we're looking now, but I'll get back to that in a moment, also to complete other standards in that area. Booking standards, what is new? Similar thing again as with the bill of lading. Dangerous goods have been included, updated for customs, and again, it's already being piloted and implemented by our members. So make sure that if you talk with your carrier that you ask for this and they provide it. Then, yeah, moving to the arrival notice and the shipment release. We are planning that right now and seeing how that can be rolled out in the best way. In fact, we had a couple weeks ago a meeting where this was discussed with our members, and actually also invited Mike to join that as a representative of the shipper community, making sure that it works for you as well. And we see that as very important and essential part. I have to clarify though, arrival notice and shipment release are not the same as ready for pickup or something similar. But these are very important prerequisites to make sure that that works and is reliable and trustworthy. And you can also see that it makes sense that we're doing that last because, again, booking, bill of lading needs to be fully in order, fully deployed across our members in order to make that work. But it's really something that we know, at least the ready for pickup, is something very important. I also know that that's one of the topics being discussed in the Ports Best Practices subcommittee. And we're really also looking forward over the course of this year to discuss it further with you, make sure that it works, and make sure that it feeds into eventually a ready for pickup message. Then, yeah, something new as well from last week, officially out. Over the past couple of years, I've gotten many questions or even remarks about, you're a carrier organization, Why are you not involving shippers? Why are you not involving freight forwarders? Why are you not involving terminal operators? Well, we always did, but it was never formalized. There was no structure to it. Everybody who wanted to provide input was always free to do so, but it was not structured. Well, we found now a way to make sure that other parties, whether you're a BCO, a freight forwarder, a solution provider, a terminal, whoever wants to contribute to our work, wants to be involved, can do so now through our new partnership program, which is called DCSA Plus, with which we really hope that that suits your needs in terms of being able to be involved in what we do. So it allows you to connect with the shipping, container shipping community. It helps you, we provide support, then really hands-on support with implementing the standards if you're a partner. And of course, as I said already, you through the partnership program, we have a structured way that we can take input from others than purely our members. But yeah, I really advise you to have a look, to contact us if you're interested in this, because this is something, yeah, we also within this group I've got a lot of questions about, and it's now possible. Then lastly, some recommendations for the NSAC going into this year, or we're already a couple months into this year, but still thought it would be good. So I think that the work that has been done over the past years by the FMC itself, by the NSAC in terms of data has been really crucial. The good numbers that I showed in the beginning are really a result of that work, and we're very happy with that. But we also want to emphasize that work on data is not a one-off thing. It's not something you can just do, check the box, we looked at it, and now it's done. We do really think that, well, sometimes container shipping is called the backbone of global economy, and the data is actually the nerve system. That's what it comes down to. So it's really crucial for functioning. It's really something that I think is part of the core of what the FMC is about. Have to say we're not a fan of regulation. This is something we do not advise, just simply because we went over the past couple of years to already a version 3.0 of our track and trace standards. We're at 180 million. And regulating it just wouldn't be able to catch up with that. At the same time, if different countries start regulating it, we will have no standard. Every country will do their own thing eventually. And that will not be helpful in finding standards and making data more reliable and easier to process. So we're not a fan of regulation, but we do really want to emphasize that we think it's very important that the topic stays on the agenda of the NSAC, of the FMC in general, because the FMC has that important role. Yes, we can do things a lot by ourselves as industry, and we should, but having the FMC facilitating that, making sure that the conversations go in the right and a fair way. Also for us, it's important to have a group like the NSAC to speak with, to talk to, because we know that you've been put on this committee with a good reason, with a good process behind it. And without it, we just need to talk with thousands of individual shippers, and that's really where the core of the FMC's role is in, is making sure that we have fair, honest, good conversations and effective conversations. So we really want to advise that the topic stays on the agenda, and together we find the right way to continue the work. And continuing the work, I think, should not just be analyzing it again. I think that's been done more than enough over the past couple of years, and we know what the issues are, we know what the solutions are. It's now really time to make sure that it's put into practice, and we're really looking forward to doing that together with you in the next year and hopefully more years to come. That's one more thing, indeed. We are hosting, together with the Port of LA, after this meeting, a drink at Parker's Lighthouse, which is from walking distance from here. Let's hope the rain stops. But and we just really want to invite you all to come over and continue our conversation after this meeting. So with that, I thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Any questions from any of the committee members? I'll bring up one then. Do you want to, since you did talk about widening engagement with shippers, other intermediaries in freight and the terminals, given the importance of the ocean carriers and the terminals, and from that recommendation, our fourth recommendation to FMC, which talked about widening the data engagement with Class 1 railroads and MTOs and port authorities, is there anything underway yet or envisioned by your members today as it looks through the rest of 2025? And if not, is there, from your perspective, a way to start that dialogue? Because we oftentimes see, can be differences between the ocean carrier and their terminal provider, and that's not pointing fingers, it's just a fact, right? And so, again, when we're trying to reduce data complexity and improve uniformity and consistency, is anything envisioned for 2025 related to the terminals?
Yeah, they're a very important group, of course. We have already a group of terminals, although again, not really formalized. It is, how should I say it best, we do need to be careful here also with compliance aspects of competition, what we can and cannot discuss. And terminals are not a full member, or not a member at all actually at DCSA, even though our members own some of the terminals. The partnership program is one thing, but facilitating those discussions is something that we have to do anyway. We do now on an individual base, but we're hoping actually to find a way together with the terminals and the FMC actually that we can have those discussions without breaching any compliance rules.
You mentioned the letter in a few of your slides. I think that's the second one that's been sent to leadership at the Shipping Council. What was their general response to that additional letter, and have you seen any movement forward since then?
Yeah, there has certainly been response. The letter wasn't sent to us, it was sent to our members, and it was not sent by us either, so I don't have full oversight on what the actual reactions were. I can tell you though that it did have, and it still has, direct effect on our members taking this very serious in terms of their planning, in terms of making sure that it's out there, that it works. We saw that last year. The ask was specifically on the commercial schedules, and I can reassure you that was from top to bottom in those big organizations. It was noted and taken very seriously. And it's by us also very much appreciated because it helps us in those discussions as well. If it's just us saying, your customers want this, yeah, that's difficult. But if the customers actually say it, or the representatives of those customers, that really has an impact. So yeah, there was a letter last year. There was another letter just a couple weeks ago. And yeah, that's certainly noted and well received.
Question I had was on the API calls, 180 million. Can you give us a sense of the demographics of who's making them? Is it by trade lane? Do you have any sort of feel of where the nexus of use is that you could share?
I'm not allowed to know. It's our members that provide the APIs, that provide the data directly to their customer or either through an intermediary. So we're not allowed to know anything we don't know simply what the data is in there. What we just know is the amount of times that the APIs are called, and that's all we know. So we don't know anything specifically about what type of customers, what type of goods. Geographically, we don't know, and quite frankly, we don't want to know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Dominic.
Thanks.
So next we're going to hear from SIVA, representing the National Industrial Transportation League, on the work that they've initiated on a shipper bill of rights. I'll take it away, SIVA.
Thank you very much, Mike, and good afternoon to the committee and everybody here. Firstly, I want to congratulate you in getting more people in the room than I've attended some of the breakout sessions in TPM. So congratulations to you. My name is Siva Narayanan. I am the chair of the Ocean Committee of the National Industrial Transportation League. We represent a huge spectrum of shippers or interested parties in transportation. They could be from very big shippers or to a very small shipper. So basically, it's a big spectrum, and we address the issues of each of the shippers in a very uniform way, so to say, right? So to move on, what I'm going to present to you today, maybe this is an eye test because we had it, I got to go closer myself, because we had it as a PDF and then we loaded it up because we didn't want it to be amended, etc. So for security reasons, we had it that way. So how did this come up, the Shipper's Bill of Rights, or what we're going to call it really is the Freight Bill of Rights, right? So the Shipper's Bill of Rights, Freight Bill of Rights. And over the years, we've seen that people have been talking, complaining about what they are able to get in terms of service levels from the ocean carriers or service providers who provide ocean services, and what they're not able to get, et cetera. And there's a disparity of how the resolutions have come and what their problems have been, and et cetera, et cetera. So we gathered a committee of ocean shippers and formed a working committee, and two representatives of the working committee are here, Laurie Fellmer and Aurelie Benchetrat is here, and they'll be happy to even take questions if you have them for them. So this Ocean Bill of Rights, basically, I'm going to go closer to that because my eyesight's a little bad. All right, so basically it says, first point there is the right for transparent pricing, right? Because as most of you being in ocean shipping know this, that the tariff pages of the ocean carrier can be as much as a thesis for a PhD student, okay? So I personally did measure that because one ocean carrier had 33 pages of acronyms that you don't even know what it is. Right, 33 pages, globally, if you're a global shipper, all right? Because bunker in one trade is called BUC, in another trade it's called BAF, in another trade it's called FAF, and then if you have another one coming in between, it's called ISF, and then it can go on, and so on and so forth, leave alone ammonia, hydrogen, et cetera, that's coming downstream, okay? So basically, we want to see transparent pricing. If I go to Macy's and buy a shirt, I don't want to know where the buttons came from. I don't want to know where my cuffs came from. I don't want to know what my cloth was costing me. I just want the price of a shirt, right? If the price of the shirt is $19, I love it, I buy it. If I don't like it, I don't buy it, right? So we need some transparent pricing. Second point is the right to reliable and timely service. You know, I bring this analogy all the time, which is, if I put my kid in a school bus, I expect the school bus driver to take my kid to school in a reliable and timely manner so that he doesn't miss the first class, right? But today we don't have that kind of reliability and timely service from our ocean carriers. You put the cargo on the ship and then you hope it gets to the other side when in a safe, in an expedited manner. What does that mean? I don't know. It can sit in a transshipment port for 3 weeks. To me, my cargo once did sit in a transshipment port for 3 weeks, and I will tell you, I paid a lot of money to air freight from the transshipment port to the customer because it was a tailor-made product, okay? So as shippers, we feel that we have the right for a timely and reliable service, right? Thirdly, you have the right for accurate and complete documentation. You know, the contents in the documentation is very sensitive when you're trying to clear customs. You can go to a country in different parts of the world and you must dot the I's and cross the T's literally so that your documents get cleared and you're able to clear customs. You cannot have incomplete documentation. You cannot have somebody who don't understand your product giving you documentation on a bill of lading that doesn't match with your packing list, it doesn't match with your invoice, and then you find your cargo stuck. And you're paying monies on detention and demurrage at those ports, right? So we feel that we should have accurate and complete documentation. Moving on. The next one we have is the right to cargo safety and security. This is important because we load cargo, or rather our cargo rides on ships that are 23,000 TEUs, 15,000 TEUs. right? As shippers, we do the right thing, that our cargo is safe, and our cargo, and I wouldn't put something on a ship that I won't put on my backyard, okay, as a responsible shipper. But we expect that the others and the person in custody, which is a shipping line, to make sure that the cargo that they carry is safe. Because the unsafe cargo that is sitting next to my safe cargo makes my cargo unsafe, right? Because you can have a dynamic chain reaction. When one blows up, everything blows up together, okay? So I think there must be some responsibility where we have cargo safety and security. Next, we have claims assistance and resolution. This is important. And I think many of us here as shippers are leaving money on the table because filing a claim is so difficult, or getting a resolution is so difficult. Not all complaints are claims, not all claims are complaints, right? They're two separate things. And sometimes our members tell us that the ocean carriers try to tire you out so that you will not follow through the claim, right? Tire you out. 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Talk to my lawyer over here. Talk to my lawyer over there. You need to have a PhD in English to read the lawyer's language. Whereas, God knows whereas I'm going, you know? So we need a timely resolution. I have a claim. You tell me what you want me to provide in simple English so that we can resolve the claim, all right? The next one we have is right to timely communication and customer support. I love AI, but I don't want to talk to a chatbot, okay? I need timely communication and customer support. Need to be able to pick up the phone and talk to somebody who understands my cargo, somebody who understands my problem. I'll tell you a small story, if I may allow me, Mr. Chair, right? I posed a question to a carrier. They looked through their books of policy, and they couldn't find my question addressed. They said, sir, you don't have a problem. I know I have a problem. Just because you can't find the solution in your book of policies doesn't mean I don't have a problem, right? So we need right to timely communication and customer support. Because at the end of the day, the carriers are providing a service. A service is best supported by customer service. If you don't have customer service and you don't have support, then I'm asking you, what kind of service are you providing? Okay? The next we have is the right to expect compliance with regulations and laws. Everybody needs to be compliant. Everybody needs to follow the laws. The majority of the carriers do that, but this is a shipper's bill of rights. If they're using a feeder carrier, if they're using somebody else to subcontract it to somebody else in some other country, it could be a drayman, it could be a railroad, it could be a feeder carrier, it could be a barge, we want them to be compliant, okay? The next is the right to fair dispute resolution. Don't bully the small shipper, right? Don't bully the small shipper, because you need fair and what did I say there? Yeah, we expect fair resolution, okay? Compliance, yeah, fair dispute resolution. So, because we don't want someone to use their size to bully the small shipper. And it's got to be fair. Not to say that, oh, this is what the back of my bill of lading says, or this is what the blueprint that you can't read says. You've got to be fair to what do you expect if you're on the shoes of the shipper. What is fair for the shipper, and what can he expect from you? Or up front, tell him what that you can do and what you cannot do. Okay? Next one is the right to protection and confidential information. Protection of information. For every shipper, what he puts in the container could be proprietary to his business. He needs that information to be confidential. I understand people in this room are collecting data, right? But data can get in the wrong hands, data can get to the wrong people, and then you find that you don't have the proprietary information secure. So it's important to secure the proprietary information. Next slide. Next. Non-discriminatory practices. What do we mean by this? I'm not talking about discrimination by race, language, or religion, okay? I'm talking about if I'm a hazmat shipper, I should not be discriminated because it's easier to carry non-hazmat. You meaning the ocean carrier, is a VOCC, Vessel Operating Common Carrier. It should be common to carry all kinds of cargo. You should not be discriminating because the port pairs are not so attractive for you, or the volumes that somebody is producing is not attractive for you. You're a common carrier up front, right? Say if you want to take the cargo, you take the cargo. Don't roll the cargo just because you want to optimize your ship, all right? Or you want to optimize from the feeder port. Don't discriminate the cargo. Next is the right to service continuity and disaster recovery plans. Yes. As shippers, we know that the Pacific Ocean can get rough, the Atlantic Ocean can get rough. We know there are disasters. We know ships can, God forbid, get into trouble in the middle of the ocean, et cetera, but have a disaster recovery plan. Communicate that plan to the shipper the moment the disaster happens, because the shipper needs to make plans how they can satisfy their customers and not hide behind the shroud of saying, oh, it's under investigation, it's under whatever it may be, I can't tell you what is going to happen. Remember, the end of every shipper is a consumer. It's you and I who expect that product to arrive and for families to get those products, right? So we need transparency as to what is the disaster recovery plan. Then we have the right to container quality and availability. Giving a booking without a box is like selling a car with no wheels, okay? So if you're going to take my booking, make sure I get a box, period. It's as simple as that. But how many times have we seen that you make a booking and in the 11th hour they said, oh, there's no box available? Okay, sometimes the box is available, but it's not the kind of box you want. Take it or leave it. So if I don't take it, my cargo rolls another week. Oh, you didn't take the box. But the floorboard was cracked. Come on. Or somebody else spilled something else in there. You're not going to go into a rental hotel room when somebody's vomited all over the carpet, right? So how do you want to be treated as human beings is how you should treat the cargo, right? So have the right, what do you call container quality and availability. Let me tell you, coming down the pike in a couple of years is going to be a rule that worldwide they want the containers to be not infested or not holding any bugs, okay? And the ship, all right, the person who takes the container is going to be responsible to keep that container bug-free. Bugs don't go into the container, bugs can be under the container. You don't expect the shipper to check under the container, right? The container owner must provide containers that are bug-free. So basically, we're looking for the right for container quality and availability, the right to fair terms and conditions. We'll run through very quickly on that one because I think this is kind of a repetition of what we had before. And then the environmental responsibility. This is a sustainability thing. It's there in the end, not because we just want to check the box, right? Let me tell you, as a shipper, I have a sustainability target. My company wants me to reduce my Scope 3 emissions by X%, right? We all have our 2030 targets. We have our 2040 targets. By 2050, we'll all be clean, et cetera, et cetera. Suddenly, the Suez Canal closes down. It takes me 2 more weeks to go to Europe from Asia, okay? I just I blew my sustainability target, or rather, I could not achieve it because I got 2 more weeks on the water, which is going to pollute the earth. That's not bad enough. If you don't deliver my cargo on time, I have to air freight. So all the sustainability emissions control that I have accumulated, I blow it because I had 1 air freight. 10 times what I saved. So there is a consequence for keeping reliability and predictability and serviceability against the environment. So if we all here agree that the environment is important, then we must make sure that all the other stuff that I said before this also happens, because it impacts the environment. One thing I think I may have breezed through some of the fine print down there, and I apologize for that, is very, very important, is bookings, right? We expect, as a shipper, if you take my booking, the clock starts at the time you take the booking. You don't take the booking and then tell me in the 11th hour that I'm not going to load your cargo. Then I go back to the back of the line again. Right? You don't tell me that if you make a booking 5 weeks in advance, it's a better chance that you get on the ship. Okay, I'll make the booking 5 weeks in advance. But I'm rolling the dice until the last week, right? Because the consortium partner may not want to lift it. Because something else I don't get an empty box. So we feel that the booking is where the time starts. This is where we exchange rings, okay? Basically, I want to get in with you, and you want to get in with me. We make the booking, all right? Once we make the booking, then the journey starts. Yes, along the journey there may be ups and downs in life, but we'll deal with it together, but in good faith. So this Bill of Rights did not come up overnight. The Knit League has been talking and listening to many shippers in different forums, in forums held by the JOC, in forums held in different meetings, the Knit League's own conventions, and the noise has been growing. Last year, I think it was in October when we were in Austin, in the closing event, we said, so what do we do about it? What do we do about it? You want to complain, then do something about it, right? What do we do about it? And unanimously, the membership said they are agreeable for us to craft out a Bill of Rights. And so we did. This is the work of the Knit League's Ocean Committee. Like I said, we have 2 representatives here, including myself, 3, right? Put this together. We started with the big funnel. There was a wish list of everybody who wants everything and every bitching point you can get. We didn't want to rewrite OSRA. You'll notice in this, there's nothing about OSRA, because we don't want to rewrite OSRA. OSRA is a done deal, okay? We had legal counsel look at this. Legal counsel did some wordsmithing. Legal counsel did some counter arguments. What if, right? We want the witness stand with the legal counsel, all right? What are you trying to tell me? And we funneled it down to 14 bullet points. I think it's 14, yes. To 14 bullet points, which is common to every importer, every exporter from the United States, every cargo owner worldwide. We have interest from people in Europe who want to follow this, and we are rolling it out today. You're the first to hear about this. We kept it under wraps last week because we wanted NZAC to, I wouldn't say bless it, but basically to be a party with us, right? So that we can roll this out. You may have a question after this, because I'm going to preempt that, okay? So what are you going to do next, right? Haven't figured it out. No, we have. There are 3 ways of rolling this out. One, our members or any interested party, this is public document, right? We're throwing it out here. It's a public document. Can take this 14 points and have it as your talking points if you're negotiating a contract. For the small shipper, right? He doesn't know where to start. He's given a 15-page contract from a major shipping line and say, take it or leave it, right? So he can take this and say, which of the 14 have you addressed? Or if not, have you addressed all my 14? Now we can talk a contract. So that is through dialogue. That's the main thing that we want people to have. Use these talking points and initiate the dialogue. The second is advocacy. We can have forums like this where we can present, we can have question and answer sessions, we can see what we need to tweak it, whatever we need to do, so advocacy. Lastly, if there is appetite in Washington, we can talk about legislation. But that's a long, drawn process, okay? That's a long, drawn process. So with that, I rest my case.
Thank you, Siva. I'd open it up to the committee. Anyone, any of the members have any questions on stuff that Siva covered or how it is envisioned going forward at this point? Go ahead, Rich.
Hi, Siva. Rich Roach, Mohawk Global. Thank you for that,
Thank you,
very
Rich.
good, thorough explanation. A couple of the points I know are already covered in the Shipping Act, so I think you are, well along the way with at least a couple of them. Others new. Just curious, though, where does it get lodged? What's the enforcement arm? What's the consequences?
Like I said, the rollout will be in 3 possible ways, right?
Okay.
If it's in the contract, then the enforcement will be per the contract terms, and a dispute will be resolved maybe with an FMC or within the companies themselves, right? If it's advocacy, then it goes in a larger public. Probably you won't get a resolution by committee, but you will probably be raising awareness, and somebody might find that they want to protect their public opinion, and so they would resolve the issue, right? Lastly, if it is legislated, then it'll be part of the law. As of now, I don't know. That's the answer, right? But I think we needed to start somewhere. There was a lot of noise with 55% reliability, except the Gemini said they had 90% reliability, which I will check. Because we're only 1 month in there. It takes 90 days for the ships to go around and all the cargo to get to destination and come back. So I don't know how you got 90% in 1 month, okay? But anyway, I will check. So once we have that, we know the shippers were surviving with 55% reliability. I mean, this is worse than the Weather Channel, you know what I mean? 50% will rain, 50% will be cloudy. I mean, come on. So with 55% reliability, we needed something, 14 bullet points. We could have gone for 100 bullet points, you know what I mean? But we needed to bring it down, Reader's Digest version, 14 bullet points only, not to rehash the past, looking forward and say, as shippers, what can we have? When you fly to Europe, and I'm sure many of you have flown to Europe, if you miss your flight at the connecting point and they put you in a hotel, you're entitled to 1,200 euros without question. That's the passenger bill of rights. My cargo has no voice. I am the voice of my cargo. I don't want 1,200 euros. I just want to get to my destination in a timely, reliable manner. Is that too much to ask? Next question.
Well, I'll comment a little further than, no, it's not too much to ask, but changing the boilerplate in these service contracts is darn near impossible unless you're an uber big shipper. So that is one of probably the largest hurdles I think that you would have. So public awareness, yeah, that would be good. But we're as far as regulatory, we're in an administration now, next 4 years at least, that looks like probably anti-regulatory. So just it looks like you have an uphill battle. We're here to help, but it's one of the things that we think we have to do is get some public awareness out there.
Absolutely. Thank you very much
wish
for
you luck with
offering to help. Appreciate that. Changing the boilerplate is an uphill battle. I agree with you. But the FMC only requires, I think, 5 bullet points, 5 mandatory bullet points, not mistaken, on the boilerplate. All the rest is negotiable, right? It must have a debt freight. It must have MQC and a few other things, right? All the rest is negotiable. So we are not saying we're against debt freight. We're not saying we're against MQC. We're saying that we are willing to be responsible shippers. All we need is carriers that will provide reliable, predictable services. So, oh, good questions. Thank you. Really good questions. And thanks for your support, really. But I think we need to start somewhere. And I'm an optimist. We're on a journey.
Siva, question. What is Knit League's plan to solicit feedback from the carriers?
We have rolled it out today. I'm sure my friends in the media over here or the friends of the carriers over here will definitely take it to them and say, hey, something came out on a Wednesday when we're all packed up and on the flight. This is like, Saturday Night Massacre, right? Okay? So, we have it out there, and I'm sure they'll come back and say, no, we can't do this, no, we can't do this. We just want to ask the question, why? Somebody told me, by the time you finish asking 7 whys, you have an answer. Okay? So why? Why can't I have reliability? Are you not a service provider? What is your obligation when you take a booking? Is booking just a intent to carry, or is a booking a commitment to carry? What is a booking, right? How heavy, how much of weight should I give to that booking? I depend on you. I'm not saying, and you're a common carrier. You're a VOCC. You're not a boutique carrier, right? And you can not take my cargo. The rules, the VOCC rules say that you're a common carrier and you're supposed to take cargoes tendered to you. So all I'm asking is very simple questions. Not me, but Knit League, right? Asking very simple questions. And I think we'll have the dialogue. The carriers will talk. I'm sure. It's not done yet. This is, as I said, we started in October, rapid time, thanks to the committee, thanks to our legal counsel, thanks to our executive director, et cetera, rapid time. We wanted to have it available this month. Thanks for the question, Ken.
I'll just make an observation. I think the thing that you're moving to is what is reasonable, right? If we go back to FMC standards, as we look at regulation, as we look at rules, as we look at behavior in the system, what is reasonable? And that's the start of a dialogue. And so I think to Ken's point, how does it move forward? Because oftentimes when we're working on these seemingly intractable issues, my personal take is that there isn't a consensus by the shipper community of what they want. And so then how do you engage at an industry level on things like this about reasonableness or defining expectation between two parties, not the proprietary commercial expectations of an actual service contract, but what is, if we're trying to improve in the system, what is possible, right? And so I think this is the start of a dialogue. I think the points raised by Rich and Ken are important to think about. But for the people in the room and the people that will watch this down the road, it's about engagement to really think about it. Because we can deal with this on our own as individual members that may be large shipper, small shipper, medium-sized shipper, to whatever that, or we can engage in a dialogue around this as shippers and then with the carriers to figure out what is a possible way forward. So we appreciate you starting the work, because I think, to your point, it needs to start someplace. Where it goes and how it ends up and what comes from it, unknown. But I go back to the service contracting guidelines that the FMC put out back over a decade ago, right? It is guidance about things to think about, considerations between, as shippers working with your carriers, to be have a more effective agreement and make sure your interests are looked out for, right? To the point that Rich has made. Not always viable with respect to the power dynamic in negotiations, but again, going back to the point of reasonableness, returning to that concept and seeing where that leads us. So I appreciate the work that the committee's done on that so far, and your willingness to start it out here as we started out the new year with NSAC.
Thank you very much. I urge all shippers in this room, please look at this document. Pick whatever you want. It's for you. It's not, it's for you. We did this work for you, right, as shippers. Look at it. If you can take 5 points, take 5 points. If you can take all 14, take all 14, right? Whatever works for you. And then it's work in progress. Bring back the feedback. Again, I thank the chair, and I thank the NSAC committee for giving me the opportunity, the chair and the vice chair, sorry.
Siva, where can
I didn't thank you, sorry.
Where can we find the document?
You're going to post it, right? With Braganza? Yeah. It'll be posted on your website. It's public.
Will it be on your website?
It'll be on our website. It'll be on the NSAC website, too.
Believe it or not, I don't think everyone goes to the NSAC website. So, it's on the Knit League website. Okay.
No, if you will give me a few more seconds, Mr. Chair. We are going to build on this, all right? We have a plan. I don't want to run ahead of it, right? We have a plan more tailored towards our members, Knit League members, and the membership will get assistance on how they can move forward with this. But that doesn't mean everybody in the room will get that kind of assistance. If you want to become now I'm plugging in Knit League, okay? So if you want to be a Knit League member, please sign up, join us, and we will guide you on how you should move forward with these bullet points, right? But initially, this is where we are after 6 months of work. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to, looking internally now within the committee, I'm going to turn it over to the Data and Visibility Subcommittee.
Clicker as well, or somebody click through it? So in the meantime, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out. To an earlier point, I think this is the largest meeting we've had, so I appreciate everybody hanging over and joining. I'm Gabe Rodriguez with A Customs. I am the co-chair for the Data Subcommittee. And to that point of where can you find it and where can you find our slides, because I'm going to slide through about 3 or 4 of them real quick. But I did include them because I knew that they would be made public. They'll be up on that NSAC warehouse website, I'm sorry. And they're on the app as well. They're on the application, so everybody that was taking pictures of the bill of lading, shipper's bill of rights, it's on there on the application already there. So let's see if this will come up. Well, in the meantime, I'll talk through it. The Data Subcommittee, as a committee ourselves, we have not met officially since our last quarterly meeting. However, we have unofficially had a few meetings here and there. We've continued communication with DCSA, with Dominique and Lauren and a few others of their group. Pointer. There we go, Data Subcommittee. So let me go back. So we just as a quick refresher, we've put out various recommendations since the onset of the NSAC, forming the OCAC back in 2022, quarter 3, which was the Ocean Carrier Advisory Committee. We put out 3 recommendations in Q4, vessel, container, and intermodal data alignment. In 23, an expansion on that data piece, and then in quarter 4, reporting on maritime data, typo in there, in annual reporting. As I mentioned, this will be up on the website and it's in your application, so I'm going to slide through these really quick. These are just summaries of those recommendations. And so just going into the actual work that we did in 2024, we had kind of sunsetted the committee a bit mid-year and then continued some conversations here or there. But we've been working, as I mentioned, with DCSA, reviewing the work that they're doing, trying to find out if we have any other opportunities to be able to partner up with any other organizations to increase the data visibility within the ocean transportation system. And then I think our next step of work into 2025, we'll be reviewing that final report from Commissioner Bensel, the MTDI report. The recommendations we had provided to the FMC were all mostly replied back with the fact that as that was ongoing work, the work of Commissioner Bensel and the MTDI, that most of that would be attended to within his report. So I think as a committee, we need to reconvene, review the recommendations that we provided, review the final report of Commissioner Bensel, and then continue to follow up with the FMC to see where we can push through better data transparency. To Dominique, and I think to Siva's point, I think regulation is going to take a hell of a long time to actually push through and get us to the point of having a better data and better transparency in ocean transportation, and therefore continuing to work with partners within the industry, I think is the most viable and most efficient way of getting there. And so we'll see what we can do together with the FMC in providing recommendations to see what can be done there. The MTDS, as I mentioned, there was 2 points that I saw in there that were interesting, that popped out to me. There does remain considerable questions about the quality and timeliness of operational data, and so that's still true today as it was 3-4 years ago when this operation started, when we proposed those initial proposals. And so some things have improved. There's a bunch of different software platforms out there now that offer transportation visibility and data. But there is something to having that become a standard, or having that become something that is just utilized by the carriers in a manner that's beneficial to, at least in our case, the U.S. international ocean transportation. And the second thing that popped up in there was the MTDS proposes that the FMC issue voluntary guidelines, and I put in the quotes there, the industry standards, on potential activities surrounding intermodal services impacting intermodal ports. And this statement was in there a couple of times, whether it was intermodal or ocean transportation or whatnot. And I think it points back again to the aspect of making sure that we have certain industry standards that are maintained and adopted by all the carriers and the MTOs, and for the benefit of ocean shippers here in the U.S. So with that, nothing further from the committee, and I'll open it up if any questions or additional comments by any of the other members.
Any questions, comments for Gabe from the committee? I think, Gabe, to your point, the recommendations that were made cover both, the shipment on the water as well as the intermodal piece, and then the expansion with the fourth recommendation into the wider universe of key partners with the ocean carriers. And so I think, to the point, the report came out at the end of the year. We need to look through and see, in the spirit of continuing to work with the industry on opportunity there. And I think, again, going back to Dominic in his engagement, DCSA specifically reached out to us based on the three original recommendations to highlight what industry was doing in this area. And so I think it still represents opportunity, I think, to how to have focus and where we're going to go as the subcommittee, to your point, to be determined. But I think it's a continuing focus with the industry on working these issues, because they haven't gone away, and we worked both independently of Commissioner Bensel and in collaboration with them. And so they were identified as priorities by the members, and so the work will continue in some focused way as we go forward. And again, for the members of the public that are here today, if you've got a specific view on that, you've got opportunity down the road here on the agenda to make a comment publicly, or you can reach out to NSAC inside the framework of what the data subcommittee is focused on, and we do want to hear from you. All right, we'll turn it over to fees and surcharges. Mr. Roach.
Thank you, Mike. Again, Rich Roach from Mohawk Global. I'm the chair of the Fees and Surcharges Subcommittee. And we wanted to go through a list of what we think maybe are the unresolved post-OSRA issues that we've had. And so we've been together a little more than 3 years already, about 10 months to go left in our existing term, with the bulk of us in the room continuing through this year. Not sure who will be around for the next session of NSAC coming January 1 of next year. But hopefully some of these ideas will have some continuity and maybe even some resolution. So there's been recommendations that we've put on many of these bullets, with the exception of the lower ones down there. But the first three have recommendations on them that can be found on the website that Ken thinks nobody goes to. But I do go to it all the time, though. So. And you can see the recommendations there, and you can also see the FMC responses to those recommendations. And so in the time frame that we've had to go and review these, put the recommendations out, get the responses back, we had other things going on. And one was OSRA came out. Another is that the final billing, demurrage and detention billing final rule came out. It was anticipated that some of the solutions would come in that final rule, but in some of these cases it really did not. So Just to run through really quickly, the jurisdiction on rail storage charges, it leaves us with no regulatory agency for anybody to bring disputes to. So there's no jurisdictional authority that's granted between, and there's an overlap between two agencies, one being the FMC and the other being the STB. And so I think one of the things that we might want to do as we go forward through the rest of this year is to explore a possible solution right out of the playbook of the FMC, where the billed party must have contractual privity with the biller. And this is one of the things that is in the D&D final rule, but not specific to storage charges. And it seems to make a lot of sense, so it's something that we can potentially look at this year. In other words, if I were to put that into an example, I would say that the person that's getting the storage charge, the cargo owner, doesn't have any contractual relationship with the railroad that's billing that storage, but the ocean carriers do. And it's a through bill of lading. So potentially the railroads, the rail operators would be charging the storage charges back to the ocean carrier, who has contractual privity with the ultimate shipper and therefore would be billing the shipper that way. I know it's another step, but then that puts authority or jurisdiction squarely back with the FMC. So it's something we'd like to explore. The second one, demurrage and detention charged on government holds. That's one that first was looked at but not really answered in the interpretive rule of 2020, but in the final demurrage and detention billing rule also really not specifically addressed. So the interpretive rule tends to apply on a case-by-case basis. I think we'd like to explore a little more formal guidance from the FMC on really is demurrage and detention applicable in the cases of government holds. And so that's one of the unanswered ones that we'd like to have more clarity on. NSAC's recommendation was kind of a proposal that was a compromise between the interpretive rule saying that if you could not get your container that wasn't available, you couldn't be incentivized, that there would be no demurrage or detention really allowed to be billed. That would be considered an unreasonable practice. But we came up with, well, maybe there's a reason that some demurrage and detention should be charged, but maybe it should be capped in the case of government holds. And that's been looked at for a long time, including in the course of the interpretive rule and Fact Finding 29, and even earlier back to the innovation teams. But it just hasn't ever been solidified as a practice or a guidance. So it either doesn't apply at all, or maybe it applies as a cap. We'd like to explore where we go with that. And then the third one, and this is a painful one, is the early receipt date, because we had got in our responses back on our recommendation that this was something that would be addressed. And I know specific to Commissioner Dye, these three last bullets are some touch points for her that people have been working on, and where actually fees and surcharges overlaps with port's best practices, which you'll hear from Deb here shortly. But we still, we're still seeing ERD dates change, and change very late in the game, long after containers have been dispatched, which basically stops loads dead in their tracks, makes them go into container yards, redelivery costs that are involved, or they get down to the pier, and then demurrage charges can ensue. And so this is a pretty painful one for especially exporters. And something that we'd love to see addressed. We'll be talking about it more and hoping that we can come up with maybe a solution, or maybe we can get guidance from the FMC on how to keep the flow going and not be penalized on the charges, because it does get quite expensive for the exporting public. Notice of availability is something that came up very early in the days of the first innovation teams, and something that's been kicked around for a while. For our friends at DCSA, it would be a potentially new milestone, new data set potentially, but also it's a true start time for free time. And so one of those things that we're interested in being able to quantify, when does free time actually start, to avoid the fees and surcharges that come with that, if it's calculated improperly. So again, I think you'll hear more from Port's best practices on that particular issue. And then finally, the container return process. There's a way that we can somehow come up with keeping flow going. But when we have these periods of heavy volume and containers, or container yards, the terminals get full with containers, how do we prevent this stopping of this load and sitting and accruing of detention? How do we make sure that there's a positive flow continuing to go? So again, it needs a better process just to improve that flow and to avoid any detention that might accrue. So those are the things that we're contemplating within our subcommittee, and again, overlapping with the Port's best practices. And I would hold it out there for any questions or comments. I think you guys are pretty familiar with all of these points, so.
Hey, Rich, thank you. I'd like to make a comment that being involved on the fees and duties subcommittee, if you look at that list, 4 of the 5 are associated with matters that take place at a marine terminal. And I think that the real key point is that we need to find some way to extend all the working rules and regulations that we have in our business that work smoothly, to have it all fall down at this last point. So I really think that there needs to be some, even listening to Siva's list of the Bill of Rights, I kept thinking to myself, well, where do we draw the terminals in on this? Where do they get pulled into the process? And especially bearing in mind that so many cases, in all cases, the terminals are vendors to the carriers, that there's got to be some reliability and connectivity between the carriers and the terminals.
Yeah, a good point. Thanks, Bob.
Anything else for Rich from the committee? Rich, thank you, as always, for a complete coverage of what you guys are working on. I'm going to turn it over to Deb, who's over Port Best Practices.
Thank you. And Bob, your question is perfect timing for what I hope to show today. Our Port Best Practices Committee, several of us have partnered with the Northwest Seaport Alliance, and we're kind of taking a different approach. We have a small task group. It's people within NSAC as well as some other BCOs in the area, importers and exporters. The beginning is starting with just BCOs. We've had a couple meetings, and what we're beginning with is identifying the process at the terminal. What does it look like? And when I say terminal, I mean each one in the Northwest Seaport Alliance. So far, just the BCO input. The next step is reaching out with marine terminals as well as directly with truckers to invite them along. All of this will be coordinated with the Northwest Seaport Alliance and also with our input. In our last meeting, I actually reached out to everybody in our group to say, give me your input. What's happening with the truckers? Have them provide pros, cons, good, bad, whatever you can. We've collated all that information, and then the next step is go back to other truckers that are beyond our own group and see what other input we can. Ultimate goal is we want to test it. We want to come up with some solutions to see how we can improve container throughput, addressing the 3 things that Rich described: early return date, empty container returns, and availability of the container. Ultimate goal, we want to see things improve, starting with the Northwest Seaport Alliance. Our ultimate hope is with our group that this can become something shared with other terminals. We hope. Again, it's a theory, and until we put it in place, we're a bit in the unknown. So that's where we are at this point. More meetings to come. additional people will be included, as well as our group, because I think that's vital and can reach everybody. And like I say, it's importers and exporters. Because if we don't look at everything at a terminal, and we only consider one side, we're never going to get anywhere. Any questions?
Thank you, Deb. Any questions, comments for Deb on the Port Best Practices Subcommittee? I think the only observation I'll make is you see the confluence of issues, right? You've got the consequence of things not working as effectively as they can in the system, which is the fees and surcharges. Data underpins the effectiveness in the system and the process aspect of it, right? So while we're talking about some of the exact same things, we're approaching it from the different perspectives, but then come back together when needed within the committee to kind of think about what do we do with what we're working on, right? So again, appreciate all. Go ahead, Adnan.
Deb, I had a quick question. So the initial data that has been collected, were there certain themes that are coming out of it and across the board that are like fairly overlapping across those? And then in terms of next steps, is the next steps to take that data and kind of map the process flow? And are there particular timelines that you're looking at in terms of being able to put some of those pieces in place?
I wouldn't call it data.
Okay.
It's
Insights.
the operational actions that the trucker has to go through is what we had asked about.
Right.
Yes, we've collated that. Is there any one glaring thing? I wouldn't say that there's anything one that stands out. And most of it is the typical common sense that we've all gone through. But then the next step will become more oriented with data and support, looking at what is happening at the terminals to kind of determine what you want to try and work on.
Got it. And then is there a particular timeline that you're thinking about implementing some of these next steps, or are there thoughts around it?
Well, if I had my way, it would have been done last week, but yeah, no. I mean, it's trying to get everybody together is always a challenge and things like that. But I'm pleased with the progress. We just started in December. We've already gotten some good input and support with the Northwest Seaport Alliance to keep things moving. So we're probably going to have monthly to bi-monthly meetings and then move it forward depending on who is participating and the feedback. That tends to be the challenge is you reach out for feedback and it takes 2 to 3 weeks for people to respond.
Hey, Deb, can you maybe,
Oh, I'm sorry.
can you maybe give the people in the room like a 30-second snippet on like how you landed on Northwest Seaport Alliance and focusing on that area first?
Yeah, it was really simple because as a subcommittee, we really were going to look at other ports and terminals. And the Northwest Seaport Alliance happened to approach me and say, hey, we want to work on this. And we said, hey, great. So it was a simple cooperative reach for both of us. And it kind of turned things around to say, well, let's try it here. Things have been tried at many ports over the years. And what really was nice with Northwest Seaport Alliance is it is multiple terminals. It is a port authority, so it's a better reach for the issues that we're all having for the most part.
I think maybe as a subcommittee member, we'd just like to say thank you to Northwest Seaport Alliance for being collaborative. You don't see that in all places, so thank you to Steve and John and the people in that market for working with us on these things, because it wasn't always well received everywhere, so thank you.
Yep, it's a great opportunity.
Do we have a question virtually?
Yes.
Yes, please.
This is Commissioner Dye.
Hi, Commissioner.
Deb has been, and Rich and I have talked with the members of the subcommittee about these 3 processes. I would like to lend as a format for discussion the Evans Street Supply Chain Innovation Teams
Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Deb. We appreciate it. Just real quick on refusal of the deal, it's a working group. We have not, what we've been trying to do is really look at and see inside the refusal of the deal, is there any feedback from the shipper community on the rule itself, right? So this is a smaller focus compared to the other subcommittees. That's why it's a working group. It's really kind of relatively small. I would say we've not gotten any feedback after asking for 2 iterations of any kind of public comment on, is it complete? Because again, going back to the original notice of proposed rulemaking and supplemental notice of proposed rulemaking, in totality, 28 organizations responded to the FMC as they were working this rule, right? And half of them were not shippers. They were ocean carriers and others. And so a very relatively thin base of response from the broader shipper community in the United States. And so we've left it open to hear any feedback, guidance to kind of collate along the lines of what Rich did with the D&D rule when it came out, to see if there's anything that's resonating with the shipper community that may not have been addressed by what came out in the rule. And so it's still an open ask, but we have nothing to update because there is no feedback. So in the absence of feedback, we'll continue to solicit feedback and continue to go forward.
We're now going to open up the floor for public comments. You can always submit feedback and comments to the NSAC official email address, which is nsac@fmc.gov. I'll walk around with the microphone. If you could just state your name, the affiliation organization you're with. Try to limit your comments or feedbacks to approximately 3 minutes. We'll kind of go from there. Just raise your hand and I'll walk around if anybody's interested to comment.
Am I on? So, Rich Roach, I'd like to, and NSAC member, I'd like to express my appreciation for your comments regarding the through bill of lading issue with rail storage. For the membership's understanding, I'm giving you a quick live example of exactly what he was referring to. We are a U.S. importer. I work for Procon Pacific out of Lombard, Illinois. We import polypropylene bags, super sacks, used by, for example, ADM, one of our big customers. So we had a situation where we shipped a 40-foot high cube container from Mundra, India, to Dallas on a Hapag-Lloyd through bill of lading. It discharged in Savannah. It moved rail into Dallas. CPKC was the rail yard in question. They were inundated with containers. Our container was put into a stack, not made available for 3 weeks. They said they didn't have any chassis available. We offered to go in with our own chassis. We're denied, allowed to use a private chassis. We were forced to use their chassis. Daily calls, container remained unavailable. At roughly the 22-day mark, they called us back and said, okay, you can bring your own chassis in now. But you owe us $5,850 in demurrage fees. If you don't pay it, it's going to quickly escalate to $10,000. We paid it. It was extortion. I would love to see member Roche's recommendation taken more seriously. Thank you.
The NIDLEAG. This is Siva Narayanan, NIDLEAG. I work for Science Go Chemicals. The NIDLEAG Ocean Committee shares your pain. That's the reason why we put up the Bills of Rights. We strongly feel that the contract holder on the bill of lading is responsible for the vendor that they appoint, which may be the Dallas yard, or the railroad, which is the Kansas City. And you should not be, we feel that you should not be dealing with the Kansas City nor the terminal, because your contract and the obligations of the contract is with the steamship line. And this is what the Shipper's Bill of Rights. I didn't go through all the fine points, but if you had got a chance to go through the fine points, you'll see that it's addressed there. We are lockstep in sync with what NSAC is doing. And that's why we decided to present this today over here with NSAC, so that we can share concerns like what you have. We've heard it in previous meetings. We heard it across bar tables, and somebody has to do something. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Donna Lim. I'm with IMC Companies based in Memphis. Much gratitude to all of you for your work. We appreciate you representing us and our voice. I'd just like to echo the comments that you've made. Comments from Memphis, Chicago, Kansas City, Dallas. Every inland hub in the United States continues to be a black hole. And so your comments, Rich, about what's still bothering us. We really like your idea, or I do, just one perspective, of continuing to pursue contracted parties, that concept and broadening it. Without the lack of jurisdiction and clarity, does it belong to the STB? Does it belong to the FMC? If we could just maybe omit the word rail and concentrate on a through bill of lading. Someone said earlier regarding the Bill of Rights, ocean carriers are providing a service, and they have a responsibility to provide that container available. All we want is our cargo. Whether we're a motor carrier representing our shippers just want their freight. And as a service provider, if we just concentrate, is that container available? And the clock doesn't start till it is. I think we're on to something. So appreciate your post work. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments.
Ted Abel from the Ames Companies. So first of all, we have the same problem when we bring things in through the rail. So just seconding those comments, same sentiment. But we actually are having some issues when containers coming into Baltimore. When we're bringing things in with CMA, we're seeing the LFD start based on discharge, not based on date of availability. So their LFD is actually different than what the terminal's LFD is. And we have to go through a dispute to get it settled. It ends up getting put on line hold. When it goes on line hold, we'll have to, get with our trucker to finally get it resolved. We don't end up actually having to pay any demurrage off of that, but it does cause delays in getting our cargo picked up. And again, we're understanding that it's a difference between what the terminal is understanding as the start of the LFD and what the carrier is recognizing as the LFD. So we welcome any input on if that is being addressed as well.
I'd like to ask a question to the last commentator. Is that experience that you're having in Baltimore only with CMA or with other carriers?
It's only with CMA, so we'll have cargo on the same vessels under a different contract, matching the LFD from the terminal. It's also happening with the same carrier out of Tampa.
Anything on your mind that you want the FMC to address or the NSAC to address? Or I know there's a lot of challenges out there, or just make them aware?
I'll just add real quick, so I was looking it up real quick just to make sure. Last 3 days are considered within the data points that we are reviewing, so that'll be something that we'll continue to push on. I'm sorry. So last 3 days is one of the data points that we're looking at within our review, and so that's something that we'll continue to push on.
Jason Lowe. I'm with Furniture Roll Companies. I'm fairly new to this business. I started to do freight 3 years ago, and so I hear these problems again and again and again. We have all the problems, and I often wonder, does everybody else have the same thing? And how do you deal with that? And we were charged with the PSS at a certain level, and what about anybody else? That kind of thing. So I feel if workers' union can be, negotiate a contract and then, get 60% of their increase, is that possible that the shippers can have a shippers' union? So we're not really fighting alone. Like we can have a collective voice to fight for the Bill of Rights or to, anything reasonable. Because compared to the carriers, I mean, we're not a big box, but we're shipping like 15,000 T a year. That's not nothing. However, like every time when we face the carriers, like you are no one. Like, this is your problem. You have to fight individually. So I was wondering if anybody wants to even entertain the idea to have a shippers union. Like we can collectively even say, hey, we're not shipping this week if you're doing this. So we're not really addressing anything, beat around the bushes all the time, That's just out of my chest. It may not be practical. Again, I'm only doing this business for 3 years.
Anyone else? Last call. Okay, Chair, I'll yield to you.
I appreciate it. And again, I think those who did make public comments, it's important to hear from you. And again, to Mark's point, it can come into NSAC, you can comment to the FMC, you can reach out to the individual members, whether you know us or not. We're going to treat what you send to us seriously, and it will get into the respective subcommittee to be considered in part of the overall deliberations. I think as far as other committee business, the only thing to note, I think, in the both being respectful of our volunteers' time and energy, we are compressing the public meeting schedule from 4 to 3 in 2025. The next meeting will be in Savannah. I'm trying to remember the exact date, hosted by GPA. That'll be one of the last regions of the country that we have not visited in the first 3 years. And again, I think along with what S&P Global JOC has done here to give us an opportunity to meet with a lot of people from across the country over the last 3 years, we've tried to be in as many locations as possible over the course of that time in at least one of our meetings each year. And so we've touched, if you have a four-corner strategy in your DCs, we've touched all the four corners plus Houston and Miami. One intermodal point being Minneapolis, and we'll finish up in the South Atlantic with Georgia Port Authority in June. There's really no other committee business. I think we've got one outstanding transition that'll be coming as Morgan moves on to bigger and better things at Walmart and has someone in the room replacing her, Ken, who will be joining us shortly. I think other than that, unless there's anything else from the committee members themselves as far as business is concerned, that's the real stuff for the forward schedule and that planning and deliberation. Anything from anybody else? Ken, closing comments.
I just want to thank the speakers who talked about the rail issue. This is my pet peeve. This is my one. This is my mission. Any of you want to come talk to me about it after, please do. I think there's a cautionary tale of too much regulation. I think Commissioner Dye often urges us to think about that. There's also regulation usually comes from bullies. The railroads are bullies on this one, and they're just not behaving well. And the truth is, no one in this room can make them. And we have this regulatory gap where you have two agencies who can't control it. It takes legislation, but that's not going to happen because the railroads are really good at that lobbying thing. And so it really does take shippers, and all we could do is keep pushing back. At some point, I would hope the railroads had the, courage to come sit and talk to us about it. I don't know that we'll get that, but I think the more people that raise it, the more likely it might happen. So thanks for doing that. Thanks, Mike.
All right, now again, I think, what I always want to focus on in my closing comments on starting with thanking the volunteers, because again, this is the fourth year, right? And so while there's been some turnover from specific organizations, many of you have been with us since the beginning. And your decision to serve in this capacity is to be commended, right? I'm not saying that because I'm sitting with you, because I think we all deal with these things on our own, or we can deal with them in a more focused and collective way like we're trying to do with NSAC, and hearing from fellow shippers and intermediaries on the same common issues. We're trying to make forward progress. To Ken's point, we're trying to, again, focus on industry working together to improve behavior in the system. The desire is not for more rule and regulation, but can we not be reasonable in what we need to do because all parties involved need to work with each other. And I take away from the comments from today the importance of this engagement. I think the challenge, to Ken's point, has been there's a lot of material out there. There's been a lot of work done by the committee, and there's not as much awareness about it and where it is, because there's a lot that's been done in the last 3 years. And that's not because I'm the chair and we're patting ourselves on the back. There's been a lot of work done. The question is, how do we still create greater awareness about it? Because we really thought first we'll travel to different parts of the country and people will be there and will be engaged, and that hasn't been the case. And so we're trying to figure out how to be effective in terms of the broader outreach. And so, like what Siva's done, bringing them in to talk about what they're working on. It creates an awareness, it creates a dialogue. It may or may not move in the direction as a priority for some of you in the room, but for others, you've made a connection with it, and you've got a party with it. Part of what we're doing is catalyzing thinking about things, and part of what we're doing is trying to connect parties and work effectively, like the Northwest Seaport Alliance. These are great things to get started, because we're going to make progress through pilots, through engagement with other parties, and maybe what starting in port best practices builds to other parts of the country, right? Based on what you find. And so we appreciate everybody who stayed to the afternoon on this Wednesday. This is important. We really do want to hear from you. I'm not saying that every meeting and every public meeting because I like to say it. It's true. We are 24 or 23 people now that represent our firms and segments of the economy, but that does not cover everything. And we know we don't have all the answers. And at the same time, we have common interest. And my view, despite the fact now we've connected with both the Global Shipper Alliance for Asia and the European Shipper Council, is that the U.S. should be leading on these things. And we should continue to try to lead on these things. And so it's important to hear from all of the parties involved in these matters, because again, we're trying to look at things holistically and not solely from the perspective of what's best for us as an individual BCO, right? This has got to work sustainably over time in the system. So appreciate everybody's attendance. I am always in gratitude to my fellow committee members. I've learned a lot from you about how to look at things, especially from Rich with his technical precision. And so it's made me a better person as we look at these things, because if they were easy, we would not be talking about them, right? And so how do we maintain the momentum forward in an environment where we've got a lot of bigger things to be dealing with at the same time as individual firm members, right? So we can continue to make progress whether in a dynamic or a stable environment. These things remain. And so how do we make progress? And so, again, appreciate everybody's engagement and your willingness to be here with us today. And if I had the gavel, I'd call it a wrap.
Meeting adjourned.